Glad that you are here today. And if you're expecting to see Shane, it's not like I'm going to reveal. He's not feeling well this morning and covets your prayers. And so I'll turn my back in case you want to leave. No, I'm just teasing. Let's go ahead and open up with this part of our service with prayer. Lord, what brought us to this point and what will commence from here forward is the same thing that we want you to do in our hearts and our lives all the time. It is that you would take ordinary things and make them be for us gospel. That we, O God, can see in the cloudy days your promises of sunshine. Please, O God, hide me behind the cross. Forgive me of my sin. And I pray, O God, that what is from you, that it would stick to our hearts and change whatever you want. But if it's not from you, let it fall to the ground and shatter. I ask these things for your glory in this never to be replicated again moment. Amen. What I'd like you to do is to take a Bible. So you probably would have to have brought yours. If you did not, there might be someone next to you. Or you might be able to go and bring out your smart device and bring up a Bible. Our mobile app has a Bible that's built in, but there's a lot of them out there. And I'd like for you for a moment to turn to the book of Psalms. And we're going to take a look at the very first psalm, Psalm 1. Now, we're not going to read it together, but we're just going to kind of walk through this psalm. There's something interesting about what I've learned about the way people react to choices. I have found, and Lisa and I both have found from raising children, that there are, and look, I'm going to tell you, this was like a eureka moment, and you probably found this out a lot sooner than us. But it was somewhere in the middle of Anna Claire growing up, maybe between her 2s and 3s and 4s and 5s and 6s. Most people call those the terrible 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s, 7s, and 8s. But there's something that we learned that was just like a eureka moment. And this is it. That when people are given more than 2 choices, they tend to choose nothing. If you give someone 2 choices, if you give someone, say, you can choose A or you can choose B, they tend to choose one of those. But if you give them 5 choices, they tend to not choose anything. For instance, we do this now with Katie. Katie, you can cry, but you cannot cry here. Either stop crying or go to your room and cry all you want. It's amazing. Or we might say, Katie, hi Katie. Katie, you're not allowed to fuss like that. You either stop fussing or you can go stand in the corner. And we end it always with this question. What do you choose? Now, what's fascinating about that is they tend to choose what we want. They tend to choose you can see the gears behind her eyes working and twirling, and she's like playing out these scenarios in her mind and computations that are, I'm not going to get out of this, and I might as well, okay. She ends up doing, maybe for about 30 or 45 seconds, but hey, that's a victory, okay? Maybe about 30, 45 seconds she might be doing, but she ends up doing the right thing. She ends up doing the right thing. And what's fascinating is I didn't come up with this on my own. And if you're practicing this, you didn't come up with this on your own either. Do you know that this is something that Jesus did? I mean, at the end of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus gives these 3 instances where he says, if you do A, if you take option 1, then this will be the result. If you take option 2, then that will be the result. For instance, in Matthew chapter 7, he says, enter by the narrow gate. If you go down the narrow gate, the narrow road, you'll find life. If you go to the wide gate, the wide road, you'll find destruction. The next one is about trees. If you are a healthy tree, you will produce healthy fruit. If you are a diseased tree, then you will produce diseased fruit. And then foundations in houses. If you build your house on this foundation, 2 identical houses. The difference is the foundation. If you build it on sand, then when the waters come, your house will just go away. If you build it upon a rock, then it will stand. 2 options, but the options are not necessarily about going down a road or planting a tree or about a foundation. They're about what he says in the very first part of this verse. It's about hearing these words and puts them into practice. There are certain things in life that when they happen, as horrible as they are not punishment. If you refuse to put gasoline in your car, and you have this important appointment or date, and you get in your car and you start that car and it sounds wonderful, and you pull out of your driveway, and about 100 yards down the road you go, now, don't ask how I know what it sounds like when a car runs out of gas. But you're not being punished for that. What it is you chose not to put gasoline in the car, and this is the result. If you choose not to change the oil, and your car breaks down, you're not being punished. It's just the result of your actions. And it's just not about mechanical things either. I mean, it's really about relationship too. If you are someone who lies, and someone comes to you and they say, well, I don't trust you. Are you being punished? No, this is what you get for lying. This is just a reality of lying. If you are someone who does not do what they say they'll do, and the other person comes and says, well, I don't trust you. That's just, you're not being punished. It's just the reality. So what Jesus is saying here, yes, there are some spiritual aspects that are going on, but there's some reality things that are going on. That if you listen to my words, you put them into practice, when the storms come, your house will remain firm. So the decision in Jesus' teaching is about listening and putting them into practice. Listening to the words and putting them into practice. Now, our psalm is no different. In fact, it's probably the first well-developed idea of this two ways theology. These two roads, this fork in the road. You're in a fork in the road, and you could either go here or here, and you have a choice of all the different genres of the Psalms. These types of Psalms, like Psalm 1, are called wisdom literature. They're wisdom psalms. And so what this psalm does is it brings the people to a decision point, offering to them the reality or the consequences of certain ways of life. But hear this. Devoid for a moment from your mind that this is punishment. It's reality. So the very first verse, the very first word of the first verse of the first psalm starts with blessed, happy, fulfilled. And what the psalmist is wanting the people to hear is this: be fulfilled. Now, time out. Someone check your weather app. Just check your weather app. Someone got a weather app? Just make sure, are we on a watch, a warning? Hang tight, everybody watching online. We'll be right back with you in a second. So it is? Still watch? Warning. Okay, good. So we're still, I'm sorry, not good, but warning. So pay attention on that. We'll put Joy and Tanya in charge of that for a moment. If we see them sneak out together, we're going to be watching, okay? And by the way, what we'll do is we'll actually go out and we'll go downstairs, okay? We'll go downstairs. The very first word of the first psalm of the Psalter is blessed. It's not necessarily circumstantial happiness. It's about fulfillment. And I'm going to tell you, we all want fulfillment. We all want to be blessed. And so what we get here is not necessarily what the choice is, but a description of what the fulfilled life is like. The person who is blessed, and notice what the psalmist does. He describes what this person is by describing what he is not. Blessed is the person who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, or sits in the seat of scoffers. The wicked, the person, what the psalmist does is start by telling the people what the blessed person is not. But we haven't got to the point of the choice. What choice it is. I choose to be blessed. Well then, hang on. We'll figure that out in just a second. But we just are given this idea of what this person is not. And notice what the wicked person, the non-blessed or unblessed person is described by associations that he or she has. The walking in the counsel of the wicked, the association. Stand in the way of the sinners, the association. Sits in the seat of the scoffers. So the blessed person is not the one who walks with the wicked, stands with the sinners, sits in the seat of the scoffers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord. See, maybe you would have expected if the description of the unblessed or the wicked or the ungodly are by his or her associations, you might then start to think that maybe the blessed person will be described by positive associations. Like the blessed person is the person that goes to church. The blessed person is the person who serves at St. Paul for All. The blessed person is the person who sings in the choir. No. It's puzzling, it's very mysterious. But his delight, the blessed person's delight is in the law of the Lord, and on this law, He or she meditates on it day and night. Now, I don't know many people who go, maybe a handful, maybe one or two. I had one in the earlier service that probably likes to delight in the law. We call them lawyers, okay? And they delight in the law of the Lord. I don't think they meditate on it. I mean, I don't go home at night and meditate on the ordinance here in Columbus about jaywalking. I don't get all warm fuzzies about that. Do you? I mean, we can probably set you up with someone to talk to if you do, but the idea is, I mean, delight in the law? I mean, when was the last time you delighted in a law? I'll tell you one. The person in the sports car that passes you at 100 miles an hour, you see 3 miles down the road, then pulled over. Yeah! That is when you delight in the law. Come on, tell me it ain't true. You do, right? All right, that might be the one time you might delight in the law. We want the law. We might respect the law, right? We might want, hopefully, to obey the law, but delight in the law? Now, the law, even when it's connected to the Lord, delight in the law of the Lord. Look, I'm not going to delight in the law of the Lord. I don't get the 10 Commandments out and say, delight, ooh, yay, this gives me warm fuzzies. This is like eating ice cream, you know? This is wonderful. I might delight in the attributes of God, in His presence, in His mercy. You probably can do the same. But delight in the law? What's really being said here is this: that the law of the Lord is really not about the law that He gives us. And look, I could be totally wrong on this. It's not about the do's and the don'ts. What we are asked to delight in is in the immutable, unchangeable nature that God governs Himself by. That God says, I am loving, and this is a law that I give myself, and on this law I will not fail. And I am going to make a law for me that I am going to step into people's lives and intentionally interact with their narratives. I am going to delight, the law, God says, I am going to be one who will never leave or forsake. I am going to be the God who will forgive, and in forgiving, offer the opportunity for not condemning themselves. And this is what I will delight in. That God is the God who will be God, and do so in such a loving way, and do so within such a deliberate and intentional manner. You see, this is the law that I will delight in, and I believe this is what the scriptures are sharing here. And this is the choice. You delight in who I am, who I say I am, and who I promise to be. If you delight in that, you will be blessed. If you don't, you will be like listening to the scoffers. Not listening to me and who I say I am, you would be like listening to those that are wicked who tell you this God's business, it's for the birds. The scoffers, the sinners, the wicked. But the choice is delight in who I say I am, I will be. Now, if you don't, it's not punishment. It's reality. And the reality is in verses 4 and 5, or 3 and 4. The person who delights in the immutable nature of God, the unchangeable, is like a tree who's planted by the streams of water and yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither. In all that he or she does, they prosper. But the wicked is like the one who are like chaff. They're like they're lighter than air, and they're like little small shells of grain that in a gust of wind they just go. Isn't that what God says through the book of James? You know, he says, ask for wisdom. The one who doesn't ask for wisdom from God is like a wave that is tossed in the winds of the sea. You go over here for a little bit, then the wind blows, and you go over here for a little bit, and the wind blows and goes over here for a little bit. I mean, it's just like it's just like you don't have anywhere to rest your feet. And see, what God says is this: the blessing that you receive from meditating on, believing and trusting that I am who I say that I am, and I will be who I say I will be. When you do that, it doesn't matter when the wind blows. It doesn't matter what the scoffers say, because you receive your nutrients from deep within the ground, rooted in your fruit. It doesn't come all the time, but when it's in season, it flourishes. It's a reality. It's what happens. I was trying to think of an illustration of how this can be packaged up. And what I believe, it's like this. I think it's like this. Many things that God says, realities, that if you do option A, this will happen. If you do option B, then this will happen. Which do you choose, these options? He knows that because he sees not life based on the circumstances, but he sees life based on its conclusion. He doesn't see what he sees it, but he emphasizes what you can't. What we emphasize is the feelings, the emotion, the circumstances of right now, the wind blowing. What God sees is the conclusion. He sees the end. Okay? And he warns us. Now, I have 30 years experience on my children. Some more, some less. And there have been some difficult moments in their lives where something drastic has happened. Unfortunate, terrible, that really, really stinks. Someone might have done something, said something, a trust that has been broken, whatever it might be, but something that really stinks. And I come up, or Lisa comes up alongside them and says, this stinks, but it'll get better. Now, how do I know that? Because we went through it too. Maybe not the exact same but we went through certain circumstances, situations that are similar. And because they are able to trust us in a short while, they tend to move on from that place and live in the result. It will get better. And I believe this is exactly what God does. He sees everything from a vantage point, from a perspective of completion. We are still in the middle of it. And he goes and says, I am with you. And I will never leave you. And certainly this stinks. But trust me, I have your back. What difference would that make in this week coming up for you? If you would just take Monday through Friday, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, just, I don't care how you do that to remind yourself, but just take one attribute and delight in it. Meditate on it. Whether it's God's forgiveness, God's protections, God's mercy, God's presence, God's omniscience, God's immutable nature, whatever it is, and allow that to speak into your calendar this week. Allow it to speak into who you are right now. And to give you peace. Give you assurance. And even though it may not turn out the way you want, keep this in mind. It doesn't take God by surprise. He has you. Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for the many ways that you continue to share and reveal yourself to us. And what we pray, oh God, is that you would continue to speak into our hearts as the day unfolds and into the week that comes, so that we, oh God, may be a people of God who are standing firm on your word, on that immutable nature of who you are, and that we would receive our nutrients from you. So may it be, O God. We ask this. Amen.